Awesome. And we're live today with the Retool team and with it from Air Black. Folks, thank you so much for joining in. It's a fantastic little evening in India for everyone who's joining in from there, and from everyone outside, a very good morning to you. Um, Guys are not audible. Folks, can you hear us? I think someone did just drop us. If you can just give us a thumbs up on the reaction. Okay, lots of folks are saying. So I think Manan, in this case, you might just have to turn up your audio. But thank you so much, folks, for the reactions. And getting started, we will do intros. Of course, Sid will be the host for today. We will definitely go through each of our speakers' profiles today. But for everyone who's new to the product, folks, today's session is about low-code development for product managers. But just before we start today's agenda, we'll quickly give you all an intro into the community, the product folks. Hand it over to Sid, who will be moderating today's session, and also welcoming in Shalini, who's my co-host for today. We'll quickly move in. Sid will walk you all through the detailed agenda, but the idea is we will be giving you all a brief into the tool, Retool. Vedant will be sharing his journey, how they use it internally, and also lots of questions around the Air Black journey. You all can definitely you'll probably already have some questions, but if not, please do look them up. Very, very interesting company. Any questions, drop it in the Q&A tab. We will curate and pick it up. Chris will be hopping in and sharing lots of insights around how do you use the platform, a very, very quick demo. If you have any questions around the tool itself, please feel free to drop that in the chat or the Q&A tab. And the most exciting part is we have a 20-minute workshop for you where you can actually try all of this hands-on, right? So we will be sharing the how-to of getting started with a very, very simple app. More about the tool, more about the workshop coming right away. But kicking the session right off, a little bit about the community. Product Folks is a volunteer-driven community of product managers, product enthusiasts, and we've been around for quite some time now. For everyone who's joining in for the first time, we will drop a link on the chat section. But for today's session, would quickly like to hand it over to Shalini and Sid. Sid, thank you so much, first of all, for making this happen and joining us. I know we've been brainstorming on this. Vasundhara, Sid, thank you so much for joining us today. I wouldn't want to hold off the audience for too long, so I think I'll take this opportunity to hand it right over to you to kick things off. And with that, Shalini, I know you had a couple of things to share, and we will be creating some time slot for that as well. But I'll take this opportunity to invite everyone. Vidit, Sid, Vasundhara, Chris, thank you so much for joining in, and Sid, over to you.
Thanks a lot, Suhas. I know. I think we've been planning this for more than a year, probably before I was at Retool even. So I'm glad we can do this today. So today, I think at least our hope is that you leave today with being able to understand how you can leverage low code in your toolkit in your stack, and where you should think about it as a product manager or anyone involved with building a product. So we have an action-packed session. We have 3 speakers today. So I'll be moderating. I am Sid. I take care of growth at Retool, based out of Bangalore. Previously, have been a product manager at Bounce, where I actually first started building Retool apps for a lot of use cases. And prior to that, been an engineer and a founder. We have Chris, who is a developer advocate at Retool. You might have seen him on our YouTube channel. He does all the tutorials. Chris was previously an engineer at Segment and Trade.io, and that's where he started building Retool apps, because he, I think, built an app for his team to manage demos, if I'm not wrong. And of course, Vidit's a close friend of mine. I'm glad I'm doing this session with him. I met him a couple of years ago when he was at Elevation Capital. Some of you might know that as Seth. And Vidit started up, I think, 2 years back with his company named Air Black. I think I was a PM at Bounce when I met Vidit, and I told him about what I was building with these like low code tools, and that's sort of when Vidit also started his journey with Retool. So I'm glad to share the stage with him, and he can talk about where he leverages low code in his company. So yeah, I think Suhas touched on about this, but the agenda is going to be, we'll do an intro. We'll talk about what is Retool, what is low code, and what are internal tools, show you around a little bit so you have some context for Vidit's session. where he's going to like talk about the use cases that his team solves with low code. And then finally we will have a workshop at the end for folks who really like want to get their hands dirty. We're going to build a live app. Chris is going to build an app for how to manage product feedback. Hopefully, I think that's a problem enough people in this room have faced and want to like manage product feedback better. So I'm just gonna move into a little bit about Retool and like how we started as a company. Obviously, I wasn't there, but our two founders, David and Anthony, were at YC. Some of you probably know YC, and they were actually building a very different company. They were building think Venmo for the UK or Google Pay for the UK. And while they were building this at in NYC, like I think 4 years ago, they sort of realized building a fintech product is just building a lot and a lot of internal tools. And they were just like spending almost 70-80% of their bandwidth building these like ad hoc apps with putting just from the ground up each time, and they sort of like built Retool to solve their own problem, right? They built this drag and drop builder that can solve, like essentially build their apps really quickly. And then they realized that that's an actual problem that a lot of other founders face. And through their conversations at YC, they realize this is what they want to work on. The market and for this is a lot bigger, and so many startups face these problems today. And so today Retool, like the hope is that it helps developers, product managers, analysts build their tools like 10x faster. And this has been the journey since, right? So 2017. Also, if there are any questions, just like feel free to stop me because I can't see the screen right now. And
I'll, yeah, I'll
so
give you a heads up in case something comes up. No worry.
thanks to us. So yeah, so this has been the journey. Just like 2017 out of Y Combinator, we're very lucky to have like Brex, DoorDash as our early customers, and that's sort of where we built a lot of the product. And over the years, it's been like now 3,500 customers strong. Had some great like backers from Sequoia and the founders of dev-friendly companies like Stripe, GitHub, and Segment. And you know we what we realize is that it's really not a problem that is fintech only or like delivery only. This is a problem that's fairly like almost every kind of startup or business has. Retool is kind of like a blank canvas, and so you might see some logos, you'll see some Indian logos out there also. The companies are like very like from all kinds and all kinds of use cases. Like I don't think any company on this list uses Retool in the same way. So with that, like I think I'd just like to give you a sense of when I'm saying Retool, what it is, right? So the way to think about this is really Retool is currently trying to change the way teams build software. Today we focus on internal software, primarily because internal tools tend to be built of the same components. And so we built like pre-built these components, and we sort of give them to you as Legos that you can put together and build your app. So the hope is, the 70-80% of what you need to do to build this app, things like deployment, things like I need a button, I need a table, those kinds of things, we give it to you out of the box. And the last 20%, which is like connecting these things together, is what you might have to like write some SQL or JavaScript for. So this is what your journey looks like. First, you connect any data source. We have a wide variety of data sources. So any database, any API, GraphQL endpoint, even Google Sheets as like the data source on top of which you will build a UI. And then you can drag and drop this component that you want and connect it to your data. And hopefully when you have something like this, after that, once you have dragged and dropped all these UI components, connected your data sources, you're able to really customize everything to to your liking and like what you're looking for an end product, and give this sort of, we start with a blank canvas, but then we give you this like visual coding experience where you have not just the visual part, but also you have the power of code. And then hopefully you're able to like launch a fully functional app. I think, we've built apps in a few minutes once you get really good with the platform, but hopefully instead of weeks, you take a couple of days or a few hours to launch that app that you've been like meaning to launch in term for your like team. And I think, a lot of what I've been saying have been internal tools, but I think a lot of you might be wondering, what are these internal tools? And every business out there, every kind of startup, every Fortune 500 company, every small medium business, they all have some internal tools that they need to power their business. And so we see this, like, whether you're a fintech company, you need tools like KYC, you might need like a loan approval dashboard, or a way to like manage fraud. Say similarly, if you're running like a delivery company like a Super Daily or DoorDash, you'll need something like a promo code manager, a way to track deliveries, a way to like turn off a zip code when it's raining, right? So these are all the tools that you cannot like just buy off the shelf. They're very custom in nature, and that's sort of where like Retool really fits well. The idea is you can build that custom tool that you can't really buy off anywhere, or if you had to build it from scratch, that would like take you time, and these tools tend to not get prioritized because we're always focusing on the customer. Obviously, right? Like if I'm working as a product manager at one of these companies, I'm going to want to focus on the customer facing tool and not the internal tool. And so that's where I think, the Retool is supposed to like fit that gap, where you can try and think about Retool as the way to bridge the gap between all the internal tools you have and powering your customer facing features. Every feature you launch will have a back office tool, and that could be where you can fit Retool in. So I think as I'm gonna like hand it off to Chris now, who's gonna like give you an overview of what all Retool looks like. So Chris, when do you want to take over the screen?
Yep.
Uh,
Taking it over.
Thank you so much, Sid. Sid, just one thing there is, in fact, we got one question which was exactly on the slide that you presented. The head of products at Priceable asked that, what is the need or where exactly does Retool fit in? And I hope that slide with all the examples answered your question. Um,
If
One
not,
question, if I can ask here, if that's okay,
go for it.
is he asked, can you use Retool for building customer facing tools so that they can absorb existing APIs? What do you think?
Yes, you can. I think we have customer face. We have a way to build public apps, and I'll put a link for that. But it's mostly for view only, like use cases right now, because you don't want to pay for every like end user here. So we give you a way to like build public apps. In fact, I built one recently when COVID happened. You can check that one out. I'll leave it in the comments. That's a public app. It's a Retool app. You can build something like that that's view only, doesn't require login.
Perfect. Thanks so much. We have a couple of more questions coming in. We can probably take that later. Chris, over to you. We can see the screen.
Yeah, happy to. And then to carry over from that question, there's all sorts of workflows for product managers that have to do with managing access to the product, feedback from users, early users, prioritization, working across different tools, your project management tool, your communication tools. And in terms of a lead-in, so I built a persona or user story manager at the last company I was at Trey, and that's how I came across Retool. So this was something that our product managers wanted to use, because basically on the front end of the business, working with clients every day, I built a Retool app to aggregate all of the different people and the different types of people that were using our product, and then use that as a way to capture information about their user story, like their journey, what problems the product was solving for them. And that became a really valuable tool internally. And the only way it got built was because Retool made it easy for me to do it while I was doing my normal day-to-day job. And that's ultimately what led me to Retool. So as an intro intro, this sort of persona and user story management can be really valuable. And oftentimes there's not a tool that does that exactly how you need to do it for your business. So let me know if you have any other questions about that, and I'm happy to chat to it some more.
Sounds good. Chris, just one request. I think the audio is a little low. I just got a DM in case you can come closer to the mic.
Let's see if I can move my laptop. How's that now? Is that any better?
Much better, thanks.
Awesome, great. Okay, so what I'd like to do is just walk you through a little bit about the Retool product, how the different building blocks fit together, and really I treat this as a conversational thing. So if you have questions, drop them in. If you have anything you want to chat about, drop it in, and I'll try and work it in as I'm speaking. And the goal is to make this whole thing very relevant for you all as product people. So when you go into Retool, you're taken into a blank canvas. And so this is a Retool app, and you can see on the right-hand side over here, you have the ability to drag and drop all sorts of different UI components onto this canvas. This could be things like tables, or buttons, or modal pop-ups, or images, text areas, rating inputs, drop-downs, charts. And you can even build your own completely custom components here. Or if you already have some other components you've built, you can import those. And so these are the UI building blocks. And at the bottom, we have a query area. And this is an area where you can connect to those data sources that Sid mentioned earlier. This could be SQL databases. It could be a Google Sheet. It could be an Airtable. It could be any API-based system that you have data in. And so to give a quick example of that, if we're going to pull some data from this Postgres database, I can just write a quick SQL query, select star from users, and then I can save and run this. And I can see a little preview of my data. So let's just view that in a table. And now I'm quickly able to get data from my database into a little UI. But I can also go in and drag and drop, say, text components here, and say I want to quickly format this and say, oh, my cat review app. Give it a name. I can say drop in image. Let's just call this dog instead. So we randomly pick an image here. And then say maybe I want to add a button here and say, oh, this is best dog. And I can pop that up. And so as these core components come together, these UI building blocks and this quick ability to create queries to interface with different data systems, you can see how you can compose a fairly complex app, starting with really simple primitive building blocks. And so these Lego building blocks can build up into even more complex applications, and you can really start to think about how does this apply to my current processes. And so part of the story of onboarding onto Retool is thinking about, okay, wow, I'm doing this manual thing every day. I'm sending out these surveys to customers, for instance, or I'm managing some tasks in a Google Sheet, or I'm going through a whole bunch of emails and aggregating information and connecting that to some other system. As you start to use Retool and start to look at your day-to-day operations, there's often these opportunities to be like, oh, I could just combine this into a little UI and automate this process for myself. And so as these components get built up, you can start to see how they could build into much more complex apps. So one example of this is with a fintech company, you often need to build some sort of interface for know your customer type of requirements. And so this might be something like you need to quickly be able to look at what their identity documents are. Or you might need to look at the audit history of the user and all the things that they've done recently. And a core component of this is it's not just reading this data, it's also being able to quickly interface and write back to these systems. So in this case, the person might need to approve or reject this user. You might also want to create like a tabbed container like this. So you can go through all of their recent transactions, their loan history, their transaction summaries, and see those in quick and easy to use charts. And so in the product realm, you can imagine the same sorts of things around feature usage and feedback around specific products or access to feature flags for beta features. These same sorts of interfaces apply to any different area where you're in the business. So that's kind of a real high level, real simple take on Retool. I'll look at some questions here in a sec, and I just want to.
Chris, do you want to just pull in a navigation bar? I think there was a question about a navigation bar. So do you want to just quickly just show that and also just show how you can share this as a public app?
Yeah, sure. So up in the top here, there's a header, and you can drag and drop in the navigation component, and this will let you build out a set of navigation menu items. And so these can link to other apps, for instance. So say we have an admin view and we want to link into another Retool app, we can do that here. And so this is pulling us into a whole different Retool app, but it's all linked together. So you can have multiple of these pieces linked. What was the other question?
So yeah, I think you want to just remove the title and just show the entire navigation bar. And then the public app link.
Oh, yeah. So if you want to share these apps, you can share them as a public access link. And so this will give you a public access link, and then you can go and copy this and send it to anyone who can then go and view it. You can also add a password here so that people can only access it if they have the password. And then what are you speaking to in terms of navigation?
Yeah, just remove the title and then just show the entire navigation component with all the, yeah. I think you want to drag the whole thing. Remove the title, like the My Dog review app, just delete that. And then, yeah, and then you can drag the entire navigation bar so we can see it all. Yeah. So you can do like a menu item like that. And you can also attach a logo if you want. So all of that is sort of possible if that's what I think people had questions about.
Yeah, okay, got it.
Cool. I think Chris, do you want to just go back to what are you going to do after with its talk?
Yes. So after this, what we're going to do is we're going to build out an app, and we'll walk through this fully functional app where we're going to build out a customer feedback manager. So you imagine you have a Google Sheet full of different users, maybe features that they have access to, and feedback that they've given. So we're going to build a Retool app that lets you go through and see all of their feedback and be able to send them a custom email message, say, asking them how their experience was. And this is based on a process that we run internally. So we're going to build out this entire app, and it'll really be a fun workshop. So stick around for after Videt's talk, and we'll go through that whole thing together. So over to you, Sid and Videt.
Yeah, I think with it you can start screen sharing.
Yeah. While it comes up, folks, quick heads up that for every question that you have specifically for maybe Sid or Chris from the Retool team, do add it to the Q&A tab in case we miss out the chat. Chat is more of a running, engaging feature. But if you have any questions for the Retool team that you want to make sure that we don't miss, please do add it to the Q&A team. We'll make sure that one of us picks it up either on the chat on the right, or Sid will definitely curate it. And if you like any of the questions on the Q&A tab, do hit the upvote so that we know what's the most popular one that we don't miss. Vidit, over to you.
Great. Thank you, Suhas, and thank you for having me here, Sid. Folks, I mean, how many of you here are either already product managers or want to shift to product? Can you put a hi on the chat box? Oh, I see a lot of people. Great. If you're already product managers, I hope your matrix and OKRs are looking good today. Oops, sorry for that. Sorry for that.
Relief. You want me to leave?
Okay, so I'll go ahead and project my screen. Quick introductions. I'm the founder of AirBlack, and we are in a stage at this point in time where I end up doing a lot of things, including customer support. So we are going to be covering that. But just by way of introduction, AirBlack is helping people follow what they love and become successful as creators or micro entrepreneurs. So in India, I think passion is a privilege. So unless that passion helps you reach an outcome or helps you create a meaningful livelihood, it's very, very difficult to follow it, right? So today at AirBlack, we help people follow their passion and become successful creators, micro entrepreneurs, and eventually launch a business. Many of them end up doing something of their own, become freelancers, and so on and so forth. And we're backed by Elevation Capital, we're backed by InfoEdge Ventures, and some wonderful angels like Lee, Ankur, Kunal from Cred, Webhav, Vidit from Misho, and so on and so forth. It's been about 2 years since we've been building AirBlack, and it's been a phenomenal journey. We truly see the world as evolving to a situation where there'll be like hundreds of different ways to be successful. So, I mean, if you think about a decade back, you would think about an engineer or as an MBA or a lawyer or a teacher as a career outcome that you found aspirational. But fast forward today, you have many aspirational outcomes. Like you could be a makeup artist and you could be larger than the nearby salon, or you could be a fitness trainer and you could be larger than the nearby Gold's Gym. And today, that is truly possible because of the power of internet, and it is way more aspirational as well. Because if you think about our role models today, many of us have role models on the internet, right? But 10 years back, role models used to be, oh, I know that Mr. Agarwal's son or daughter who's studied IT and gone to the US or gone to some other country and doing well. But today we know all of these influencers, creators, successful freelancers who we rigorously follow and aspire to become like, right? So there are hundreds of different ways to be successful, and AirBlack is pioneering this economy by helping people become better at what they want to do. Been about a year since we launched our first category, which is the beauty and makeup space. Just to give you a perspective, about 10 million plus people in the organized and unorganized sector are employed in the beauty sector. And that's about 2 times the number of people employed in the IT sector. In the last 1 year, we've been able to help more than 30,000 women in approximately 500 cities learn makeup professionally and in some capacity or the other launch their own businesses, right? So whether that's a freelancing business or whether that is like becoming a creator on Instagram or YouTube or starting their home salons, many success stories in the last 1 year. And what we are seeing on the ground is phenomenal and never heard of. At this point in time, we receive about 40 million brand impressions a month, and we are one of the topmost brand when it comes to saying that you want to learn makeup and do something professionally with it. A quick run through of the product, given many of you are aspiring product managers and or want to become product managers. We follow a DIT pedagogy, which is one of a kind. So every single class at AirBlack is a do it together workshop. DIT stands for do it together. And we've been able to do that at a scale of 40,000 attendees a month right now, which is one of the largest in the world when it comes to pioneering two-way workshops. These experts teach you live on Zoom. So every single person who's learning is actually learning by doing it together with the expert and getting two-way feedback. So while you might be in a 100-member class, you feel like you're in a personalized class and you're able to get feedback in real time. It is complemented by an app which looks like WhatsApp and Telegram groups. So something that you already know. And you're able to sort of submit your assignment, submit your looks, get them reviewed on the product. And today at this point in time, our week 12 retention rates are north of 70%. So they're better than many social media networks. And people are able to get a lot of action from the community itself by getting real-time peer feedback or from the expert and so on and so forth. And lastly, we give them access to business tools, given that it is a vocational course. So you come in, you learn something, and within 2 months, you're able to sort of go ahead and launch something of your own. Or even in many cases, many people end up recovering the cost that they paid for the course initially during the course of the program. And that's phenomenal because if you think about traditional education, you take about 4 years, 15 million people enter the workforce and only 1 million people will end up getting jobs. So 14 million people would spend on an average 2 to 4 years of their lives and not get an outcome. So we are pioneering this economy where we give people 1 to 2 month certification courses in an entirely new pedagogy and help them get empowered as entrepreneurs.
Vidit, I have one question before we jump in. What was the reason you chose beauty as the first like future of work category?
So I mean, if you think about the top of the funnel here, Sid, on YouTube, makeup learning content is actually close to 4 to 5 times IIT and JEE content plus UPSC content combined, right? The top of the funnel is massive. I mean, it's a skill which people don't just learn because it makes them, feel confident, but they also learn it because it's a skill that they can use to launch a business. So, I mean, typically a makeup artist in their locality will end up earning anywhere between 10,000 rupees a month to 40,000 rupees a month, and in a country like India, that's phenomenal, right? And whether it is a small city to a big city, weddings is huge in India. We are actually world's second largest wedding market. So if you're someone who knows makeup professionally, one, you're a local star, and second, you probably would know one relative or the other who's getting married and who needs help in makeup. And if you're doing like a couple of assignments, you're earning more than what you will earn if you are probably employed at IT. And this impacts the 500 city of India. So beauty had these characteristics where people were super passionate about it, massive top of the funnel, and scope for us to create an outcome which is not just learning a passion skill, but using that passion skill to earn. So that's the reason we went ahead and built our forte in beauty. But this is just the beginning, and we'll probably go ahead and come up with some exciting news very, very soon in other categories as well.
Thanks. I think if folks, you have more questions, like feel free to ask with it also.
Sorry guys, I'm not able to see your
Yeah.
Q&A screen, so I'll probably take a pause after 5-10 minutes and then I'll continue. Okay. So one of the core product philosophies for any decision at Airblack, and I mean one of the, I would say, biggest reasons for us to also go ahead with something like Retool was that everything that we think at Airblack is that how can we increase delight for our members? How can we go ahead and make them more confident? And when you're doing a class online, right, you are technically competing with the person's attention span on multiple other platforms, because when someone is doing a class online, they're distracted, right? So every 15 minutes, you have to ensure that the class is interactive, post-class experience is great so that people can actually deliver on the learning outcome that you set out for. So we focus a lot on ensuring that every member is successful, every member has a delightful experience. And when you're doing it at a scale of 300-400 students a month, which is what we started with in the first 2 months of Air Black, things were very rosy. But in the last 6-8 months alone, our traffic and our number of attendees has grown by almost 40x. So we are doing close to 40,000 attendees in a single month, and our NPS at this point in time is closer to 72. And the reason that has probably sort of sustained over time and people have a fantastic experience at Air Black is that we have this delight philosophy at the core of whatever we do. And we set out with a constraint that as we scale, we want to scale our personalized support. Like people in these areas where they come from the remotest of towns, they have questions they want to get answers to. They also struggle with technology. And we wanted to ensure that, our operations team and our customer support team is truly empowered to resolve those inquiries in the least possible time. And that is when we can ensure a delightful experience. A quick number, guys. In the last 6 months, our operations team has actually grown from 2 people to 3 people. While our scale has grown by almost 40x. And I think I would give a part credit to Retool because we use a lot, like across the business team. Retool is used to scale up the customer experience that we're delivering, and our operations team functions like a full-fledged team and uses Retool to resolve a lot of customer queries. And I'm going to show that to you how very, very soon. But it wouldn't have been possible for us to scale this delight at the scale that we are doing right now had it not been this call to scale through product and scale through something like Retool. So the core problem statements, that we started facing when we were scaling were that in many cases, people who attend workshops, they are not able to see that their workshop attendance is marked. Now, why does it really matter? Because if your workshop attendance is not marked, you don't get a completion credit and you don't get a certificate. Why is the workshop attendance not getting marked when the person is using a product? It is because we use Zoom at the interface, and Zoom is an external software. And whenever there is a manual link being shared or whenever the link is shared outside the product, the attendance doesn't get marked. And this is a recurring problem statement that we were facing, right? Things like, I mean, if your workshop attendance is not marked, you will not be able to access the recording. People had personal issues. People were missing out on workshops and they wanted to attend them again. So they wanted us to go ahead and add those workshops to their kitty. And all of these things were like routed to the operations team, and operations team had to liaise in with the engineering team to get this done, right? So I'll just show you how we used to sort of do it. This is how we used to sort of
With
do
it
it.
before that, like how did I mean the 40% number just like as a product manager screams at me. Did you think about solving this product? And like what was your like thought process behind that 40% like workshop attendance number? It seems like it's just one action, right? Like you're always getting pinged about the same thing. So how did you think about solving it like via product instead of ops?
So the decision here was more driven by saying that, hey, if we had to solve this problem completely via product, it will take us dedicated 2 months or 1.5 months of engineering capacity, because then you'll have to migrate from Zoom to something which you own, right? Which is probably you integrate with an existing video API and you make your own video streaming solution, right? Or I mean something like AirMeet, right? You have to go ahead and build something like AirMeet for you internally. Now that's 1.5 months to 2 months of engineering bandwidth. Similarly, like other issues are broadly related, right? So any single time we ask this question whether we have to prioritize this product feature or not, it comes down to saying that do we want to invest engineering bandwidth on it. Now the other angle is that, okay, if you have to solve this without engineering bandwidth, then you have to scale your ops team. We didn't also want to do that, because if we scale our ops team, the experience will go for a toss. It will not be consistent. That is where, I mean, I think something like Retool ended up adding a lot of value. So I'm going to, of course, show you how we actually ended up solving this problem without taking up a lot of engineering bandwidth. Sid, did that answer your question?
Yeah. I think if anyone else has like a follow up, we have time for Q&A after that.
And a lot of you will relate with this screen when you're sort of scaling up, or you're starting something which is an MVP. You'll have bunch of either Slack groups, or you'll have all these Excel sheets rolling around functioning like CRMs, and that is what ended up happening with us. And at a certain point in time, in the fourth, fifth month of operation, it just became absolutely unsustainable, right? To scale this.
If you had an estimate, how many WhatsApp groups or WhatsApp pings did you get in a day?
We actually said that we are not going to use WhatsApp, but unfortunately, our members only used WhatsApp. So our ops team and our support teams were getting like 40, 50 WhatsApp messages every single day at the time things started breaking. And we had set an internal benchmark that no matter whatever happens, we will resolve the problem for the customer within 24 hours. And even, I mean, looking back, that seems too high even today. But at that point in time, that was the best we could do.
Nice. Well, and this Slack channel, like is it something that people are manually writing things to, or did you have like getting posts directly like through some like triggers or bots or something?
No, I mean, see, the problem statement here is that in every of these messages, in these specific cases, involvement of the engineering team was needed, right? So they would post only those issues where engineering bandwidth was required. Then our backend team would sit for 1-2 hours every single day and manually solve that problem statement, because I mean, it was a fix, right? So that is why we had to track it like this, because if you are dependent on the engineering team, you can't take their bandwidth every single hour, right? Mm, that is why this Slack channel existed in the first place. It was actually a subset of our issues. It was not all of the issues that were coming. It was a subset of all the issues that required engineering bandwidth. And I think it was also, I think, quite a similar time period when Sid and I were chatting, and Sid was at Bounce when I asked him, boss, I mean, how do you end up solving this? Because it seems like a big task for us to deploy 2 hours of engineering capacity, 3 hours of engineering capacity every single day, right? And I think Bounce at that point in time was using Retool for a lot of their internal tools, and I learned from him how Swiggy and a couple of other companies were using it. And I think we went from listening about this to going live with Retool in about 14 days to see our first impact. And of course, a lot of things happened after that as well. But it was a eureka moment for our team, right? Okay, this is something we could do. We of course knew about a lot of other internal tool solutions, it also developed some of our tools internally. But I think this absolutely seemed like something which, I mean, you would look at as a PM and you'll say, "Hey, I'm writing a PRD. Let me create a wireframe." And I mean, then you give that wireframe to your developer. They will probably brief on it and they'll do it in a sprint. But here, going live from creating the wireframe directly on the product to eventually launching it was like absolutely seamless and easy, right? The impact of that has been that today our operations team, even our HR team for that matter, uses Retool to do a lot of recurring tasks internally, and our resolution time for all the things where engineering was originally required has gone down from average of 12 hours 6 months back, 4 to 5 months back, to now less than 20 minutes. And I think a lot of it has been possible because we do so rigorously in our daily operations, compared to what we were doing any time before.
I know when I joined, one of the first accounts I checked on was was you, and seeing how you guys were using it, because that like put a smile to my face. I was like, I just casually mentioned it. I think I came over for like chai for like half an hour, and we just like seen such an interesting. Oh, your screen's gone off by the way.
Yeah, I did that on purpose.
Okay. Yeah. So I think it's just impressive to see, like, when you have so many priorities, that you like took out the time to build, like, try a new tool, and were able to ship this stuff like so quickly.
Guys, I'm curious, like in the audience, like how many people have like some sort of Excel which they're using to get something done internally? Like, I mean, apart from analytics or tracking, like probably tracking some issues, or using something as a CRM, or using something to track certain things.
Whether,
I
in
mean,
fact, we can do a quick poll on that. Like, I think lots of folks are using Excel, Google Sheets. Like, you can check the chat on the
issue
right.
tracker. Yeah, I mean, see, issue tracker is something that every single PM will relate to. If you're a PM and you're doing a consumer facing stuff, it's absolutely impossible you're not tracking your issues in some way or the other, right? And a lot of people are using it. So I think just look at that Excel sheet. That's like the literally the PRD that you need to launch a Retool app. And I'm guessing Chris is going to show that to you very very soon. But don't get I mean, whatever Chris is going to show you, it's as simple as that. I mean, I'm going to show what we do with Retool at Airblack. So I'm just going to show our Retool app. So we now have like almost 5 to 6 big apps on Retool. I'm going to show you one of them, which is heavily used by our operations team. And that's the one that I was talking about. So let me project my screen again and display that to you. Think about your issue trackers, guys, and think about this tool that I'm going to show it to you right now. It's probably as simple as that.
I'm going to get a lot of questions of, are we a Jira killer? We are not one. Before
Okay then. Here you go. So
Whether, is this a live one that you are like showing on screen, or is this one of your POCs that you had built earlier?
no, this is not a POC. This is a live tool. The only thing is that I've entered a number, so you can see
Fair.
that like just one entry in the row. Otherwise, like how you see it in Excel, you'll have multiple rows, and every row is a member. I mean, it's an actual member at Airblack. This is a test member, and one of the biggest use cases that ends up coming, for example, is that I bought your course and I was due to start this week, but suddenly my aunt has fallen sick and I can't start. So can you please help me change your batch, right? And I mean, this is one of those things which we could do on product again. It's important but not urgent, because the volume of, for example, issues is not very high, and there's a lot of course, engineering and product backlog always happening at a fast growing startup. But with Retool, I mean, if I am the person in ops, I can, without the intervention of the engineering team, just go to member details, click on member details, and as you will see, like how a member detail opens up, it's like boxes, and how you would probably design something like this on Excel, right? And I can just click on change batch. So I've entered a button, and if I open up change batch, it opens up the respective schema or the data that I need to change. So for example, I can select the course, I can select the language in which, I mean, the critical fields that we need to change the batch, I can enter that and I can submit it. And once I submit, the person's batch is changed. Now, if I had to imagine doing that without Retool and without empowering the end consumer to do this on their own, then I had to again put a request to dev, and dev probably would end up taking their sweet time, because they are already busy with so many other things, right? To change this, and during that time, the customer probably 1-2 days they'll end up not getting a reward from us, or probably not getting their issues resolved with us. And at a scale, like if you're getting like 15-20 batch requests every single day, it becomes difficult. Other use cases, for example, I mean, I have the entire member data with me here. So when I click on member details, I have their batch details. I have like how many workshops have they done, how many workshops have they reserved. I can go to their workshops, and as soon as I click on the other tab, another database opens up, which is like Excel, right? That what are the kind of looks that they have done, what are the kind of workshops they have done. In many cases, for example, I was telling you about how people end up saying that my workshops are showing in mist, but I've actually completed them, right? And we had to now manually change the status of those workshops to from missed to completed. So here it is again like Excel. Like I see the class, which is the cool rim dice look. I'll go to the workshop status and I'll mark it as completed. And this is exactly again like how you will make your Excel sheet, right? And it's done. Again, this is one of those queries which the dev would probably end up taking in bulk. They will look at a spreadsheet with 35 requests and they will go ahead and do write a script for it and then manually change it, right? But here the ops team does it seamlessly.
Damn. And before that, how many times were you uploading that like bulk sheet, you would say? Like, were you doing it in bulk? Were you doing it like every time a request came in?
So, Sid, I think every single day we eventually, before making this as an internal tool, we had two things going on. One was we had a daily process where in the night, ops team, the backend team, and couple of poor interns were to do a lot of manual data ops work. They will sit together and for 2 hours they will just do like bashing, right? Which is like, let's clear all these requests up. It used to be 15 minutes before, so we never realized like within a month and a half that became like 2 hours, and we like, okay, damn, now we need to do something about it. The solution was that, hey, okay, let's do one thing, let's develop features on the consumer side. And then we started writing features on the consumer side and we realized, okay, this is going to probably take us 3-4 months to pick up, and at the scale pace that we are scaling, this is going to become unsustainable, right? So at that point in time, I think I was searching for solutions. We were also, of course, saying that, okay, we'll use Zapier and Google Sheets, and then we'll train people on Google Sheets to do it. We explored that, and then we figured out that every single time now the person is needed to write Zapier queries or APIs, right? So the problem statement changed from going and sitting with dev for issue resolution to going and sitting with dev for every single time figuring out why this spreadsheet is not working, right? So I think Retool just fit in that way because we had to like just set it up once. The ops person today can just write a PRD themselves. Like they'll make the tool on Excel, then they'll sit with the dev and the PM. They'll sit for 2 hours. Next day or next to next day, the tool is out, right? And once that is out, 2 days you'll do bug bashing and it's up and running, and then it's just working seamlessly, right? So now today, the number of departments that use Retool at Airbag include HR. So HR, for example, themselves upload employee statuses, managers directly on Retool, and they are able to calculate incentives for our sales team and for our ops team. The ops team uses it for customer resolution, for consumer experience enhancements, and so on and so forth. And then we have the support team using for issue resolution again, right? Three different teams using it, and it's now becoming difficult for us to say, okay, now let's go ahead and also write a PRD for solving it on the consumer side, but people are continuing to use Retool and solving it on their own.
Awesome.
Yeah, and I
Hey,
think
do you have any other slides? I actually wasn't following where we were.
no, I think we've broadly covered most things, and I'm happy to answer any questions, any things that you have, whether on how we use low code or Retool to anything on Air Black, or I think Sid. If there are any questions for Sid, you should just post it on chat, and we are happy to answer.
Yeah, I've been answering some of these questions. I think like my main question for you is in terms of what did you not think of building these internal tools earlier? Was it something that you were not able to prioritize? How did you think about prioritizing before you were using something like Retool? What was like the main?
So when we were, as I said, like when we were not using Retool, for us, this was more of a bet between deciding to deploy engineering capacity for 1.5 years or hiring additional engineers, right? Now, net, we didn't end up either hiring those engineers, or second thing, we ended up saving engineering cost because we were not investing those hours on issue resolution, right? So before, scene used to be like, hey, let's hire more engineers, or let's create a specific team where a PM will come in, and that PM will only work on internal tools, and they will have a pod and they will work on this stream, right? Today, there is no team which is specifically working on internal tools. It's like the business leads who know how to write a PRD themselves, and it is like two engineers who know how to sort of get a Retool app up and running in 2-3 days, right? So that's how we are functioning at this point in time.
Yeah, makes sense. I think I think like the other question I would have is like, now when you are like prioritizing, how you think of a roadmap? Like, where is Retool coming in? Is it something that is part of the feature? Like, is it like based on a feature there will be like an expectation that you're shipping a Retool app to power that, or are you like dedicating bandwidth to building of Retool apps? Because even that takes time, right? Like, obviously it's not magic, like zero bandwidth.
So, see, there are three types of problem statements that we are working on in product at any given point in time. One problem statement is consumer products, consumer apps, something that is solving the end consumer's life. Where, I mean, it is very clear to us that the engineering team will put in 99% of their capacity. Product team will. That is not where we intend to use, even for that matter, not just Retool, but anything which is third party, right? Because that's our core, right? Then the second type of problem statements are problem statements which are recurring, are important and urgent. For that, even if it is an internal tool, if it is so important and so urgent, we will deploy engineering capacity and build it. But the one thing that has now changed as a mindset is that we don't need to get it done as soon as possible. We can say that, okay, which is the third type of engineering function that I'm coming with, keep in the 0 to 1 phase, which is, let's say, in some products can last for 3 months, in some products it could last for 12 months. We do not have to develop and dedicated capacity for internal tool, right? But if something becomes significant enough, so for example, our expert payout tool currently is on Retool. We know that after 6-8 months, it would not be on Retool, right? But without Retool, I would have been thinking that, okay, we would need more engineers and I'll have to do this without in 3 months. But it has now given me that flexibility to say that something like Retool internal lab will scale for 6-7 months, and I don't have to solve that problem at this point in time, right? So this is how life has become in terms of product prioritization. Having said that, whatever you see right now, probably it will end up as a product developed by Airbag engineers in 1-2 years. You would know this better, what is the absolute reality in other companies. But I don't see that getting our engineering capacity bandwidth in the next 3-4 months anymore, because Retool is scaling well for us, right? So yeah.
Kind of look at if there's questions. I'm seeing a lot of questions like about Retool. I don't want to go into that for specifically with you. I think we'll cover that later. Um, in terms of when you are building these apps now, who is building them? That's like my last question to you. Like, who is actually like who is owning the building of the Retool app in your org? I've seen multiple ways of doing it, sir.
So we've actually made mistakes here. The way we started was saying that, okay, this tool is for PM, so let the PM figure everything out. And then we realized that, okay, that's not how it's going to work, because you end up wasting a lot of time. Then we said that the business person will be the eventual user. So the business person's role is to just create an Excel PRD. Like, the thing that they want to solve should be either present in Excel for us, and most of our use cases end up getting productized on Excel. They will submit it to the PM, and then the PM will end up working with two engineers for in 2 to 3 days and turn that around into a tool. That process for us is working well. I would also love to learn from you and your team if there is a different way to approach this. But at least, like, in this process, everyone is doing what they're great at, and hence, time is getting saved, and the end person who needs this product is getting what they want. This is something that we've been following. It's working beautifully for us.
with it, I'm hoping in today's workshop, a lot of folks here pick it up, and then we see lots more people being able to build it on their own. But I think I agree with you. Like honestly, I've seen a similar transition, right? A lot of folks get very interested in doing it, but I think in between, I think there is a small team that owns it. Sid, maybe you can also share your experience. How did you folks do that bounce? Like we'll get different perspectives.
Yeah, I made the same mistake. I think I brought in the tool, right? At that time, I think Retool was not very well known. So it was like to sell it internally, I was like, PMs can build these tools without engineering bandwidth. But at initial tools, which we built, we could build these ad hoc tools. But then we started building our full complex like coupon code management system, or like customer like self-serve. Like if you open Bounce app today, like you will see like a survey feature that's powered by Retool. All the coupon codes are powered by Retool. And those apps were built as like new microservices, as new like as part, and it required an engineer to then build the UI for it. So it became like a like slight like fight. We had another person from customer support who upskilled actually, and he built a bunch of Retool apps. He bridged this gap, the fight between engineering and product. And now he actually I think works at Apna as like an automation and Retool expert. He was hired as a Retool expert. We've seen all kinds of things happen. I think at the end of the day, it's best to like uh, give like engineering still ownership, because it is a developer tool. Because in a lot of cases, as your team scales, you're not going to give access to APIs, you're not going to give broad write access. But the part of designing the tool can be on the product manager or the business manager, because you can do the drag and drop. So we see it as a good way to collaborate, instead of like people writing Jira tickets and or linear tickets, if you may, to create this like change this one button from a drop down to a text input. That will not happen anymore with Retool. So the way I look at it is like Retool is like saving work that engineers don't want to necessarily do. Not work that like I think it's wrong to say it saves engineers. I think it allows your engineering team to focus on the customer facing feature, and then when you're shipping this feature, you don't worry about, oh shit, how will I disable this feature if something goes wrong. Like that feature flag you can manage in build a UI on Retool. And I think building that CRUD app is like one of the most painful parts of shipping this feature typically, because everyone's excited by the consumer app feature. No one's excited by building the internal tool. And that's sort of why I think we focus on that problem itself.
That's very fair, I think. Thanks for sharing that. Yeah, over to the next section, but I think I'm seeing a lot of questions on the Q&A tab. So I'll just request everyone, I think we might run out of time on today's session, but if you can all help us just upvote the ones that you think, you're interested into, that might help Sid pick up some questions as much as we can cover for sure. What do you think, Sid?
We have one last question, which is about AirBlack, which is how much of AirBlack infra is built in Retool?
So my sense is that here infra refers to what percentage of our probably products are powered by Retool. That would be still probably less than 10%. However, I mean, again, we have a lot of, I would say, features and products powering a complex workshop software, right? So Retool specifically, as I said, ends up powering a couple of HR use cases, 3 use cases for ops, and those 3 use cases for ops team end up taking 20-30% of the time. It would have been infinitely higher than this if Retool didn't exist. And then for support team, 30 to 40%, right?
Yeah.
So that's how it looks like for us.
Yeah, I'm assuming like consumer app backend, none of that is obviously like
Yeah.
powered by Retool, right? You're just using it as a UI on top of your database. Like
Correct.
broadly, that's the use case. Like an admin panel, whatever an admin panel will be part of your general infra, I guess.
Correct.
Yeah, makes sense. Well, I mean, I think with that, I think I'm gonna like give Chris some time to build that app now. I think the folks who are gonna stick around for the session, like they'd be like, you can, I think with it, you can always reach out to on Twitter. He's pretty active. And with it, I know you are also hiring. So why don't you just like plug what you're hiring for right now?
So
This
guys,
is always hiring. Air Black is perpetually hiring.
no, we are actually looking for, and if there are product designers here, or of great product designers who would love to sort of take up interesting challenges, we pride ourselves in being a extremely design-led company. In fact, like designers end up doing a lot of things that a PM would eventually do in a larger company, right? So we are hiring product designers across the board, and of course, always amazing to connect with people who are entrepreneurs or who are ex-entrepreneurs and are looking to build something together. We are a team of entrepreneurs at Air Black, and we love to partner with them and whatever. So there are exciting projects happening across category launches to international expansion, and would love to have you guys on board. So I'm going to post my email ID on the chat, and then of course I'm on Twitter, so I'm going to post my Twitter handle as well. So this is my email ID, and the Twitter handle is this. Feel free to reach out wherever you feel. My DMs are open. Feel free to reach out wherever you find it more accessible. I would love to chat.
Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Sid, Suhas, everyone here for hosting me. You guys can continue. Thank you.
Thanks so much for that.
Thank you, Vidit.
All right. With that, I think I'm going to pass it on to Chris. Like I said, if you had questions about Retool right now, you might have ended up on our YouTube channel. You're going to get like a live session from him now. He's going to build a Retool app, and hopefully he's going to clarify more doubts that you have. But feel free to keep asking questions. We're going to try and keep this very interactive as much as we can. So I already shared the link earlier, but there's the retool.com website. You can start with the free trial. There's obviously the credits as well, but the free trial will give you 2 weeks, so you can at least try and build with us while Chris is like showing how to build a Retool app. Over to you,
And
Chris.
folks, highly, Chris, so sorry, just before you say, I think we'll have to just let them know that, we highly recommend you trying it on the side. I think we've done a bunch of these workshops earlier, and highly recommend that, take out these next 20-30 minutes. Hope you've joined from the laptop so you can make the best use of this. Chris, quickly want to check.
Yep.
Folks will be able to build it along with you, right? Like while you are presenting, they can follow through and build it alongside. Would you suggest that?
Yeah, as best as possible. As long as we can get through the app and show we can build through it. But we're just connecting to Google Sheets and Gmail, so it's a pretty fast setup. If you want to follow along, definitely sign up here. Go to Try for free. All you need is your email and a password, and you can just jump in and build along with me. Cool, and I have the Q&A open here. So definitely, as we're going, let me know if you have questions, and I'll try and work those in. And if you get stuck on anything, drop that in the Q&A or the chat, and we'll try and solve as many of those sticking points as we can. So yeah, definitely ask questions. We talked about these product manager workflows, and one of these specifically that's really important has been, how do we gauge what people are liking and not liking about the product, and really personally engage with them. And so to step back a sec, I'd be curious to drop in the chat, what are the internal tools that you're using? Based on everything we've talked about so far, you should have a decent sense of what an internal tool is. What are the workflows and tooling that you're currently using in your roles? And so I'll just give that a second if you want to drop it into the chat section.
Chris, I think people are also interested in the sample data you're going to use. So
Yep.
while we're waiting, why don't you just share the sample data that people will be able to use while they're building the apps? I think you want to just clone the sheet and then share with people. Folks, just clone the sheet so that you can also edit the other sheet that you're going to be using.
Okay.
Also, Chris, it might be good to just lock the permissions or change it to view while you share. If not, it'll get edited.
Yep, sure thing. So let's. Let it load here. Let's share this. Okay, so I'm going to drop this sheet link in the chat, and let me know if you have any trouble opening it. All right. Looks like we're getting a bunch of people in, so great. So if you look at the sheet here, you'll see we have a set of UUIDs, names, emails, sample data around the features, company names, whether the feature is enabled or not. We're not going to be building this out, but one example you could build into this is maybe you want to send them a custom intercom message on the site based on which feature they have flagged or are using, and some specific feedback that they've given. So feel free to peruse around that. And let me just check the chat here. So I can get some Airtable, Sheets, Teams, ClickUp, Zapier. Cool. So just to give a little bit more context on this, this is something Jane, our head of growth in the US, does. And what she'll do is when people send in a product feedback score or a survey, they'll say something like, oh, this worked or this didn't work, or I had some trouble with this. And every single time someone does that, it's an opportunity for us to, one, give them a good experience of, hey, we're listening, we hear you, we hear that there's something important here that you would like to see the product do. And two, it's an opportunity for us to improve the product and our service. And so Jane, what she'll do is she'll send out a personal email to whoever sends that feedback in and say, hey, I saw you were using this. Can you give me some more context? What would have worked better for you? What was your experience like? Where were you coming from? What's your role? And doing that and building that organizational muscle around collecting this feedback really leads to the most innovation possible, because we're constantly learning from our customers. And so this Retool app is inspired by that process. And so, like I said, what we're going to be doing is pulling data in from this Google Sheets, building out this UI that'll allow us to scroll through the feedback that's come in and quickly personalize email messages to that person, and then send out an email via an SMTP connector. It's like some questions in here. So rather than integrating with chat on intercom, yeah, so you can also integrate with an API like intercom or some sort of on-site chat service directly through an API. So email is not the only option you have here, but it's the simple one that we'll be covering. Okay, so let's jump in and start building. So when you log into your Retool, you'll get to a section under the Apps tab, which will allow you to organize different apps, put them in folders, create a new one. And check out in here as you're going, look at templates are often a good place to start, so you can see some really simple applications that have already been built. And for us, what we're going to start with is by creating our Google Sheet resource. So I'll click on the Resources tab, and you can see all of the resources I have set up, from GraphQL to MySQL, Postgres, Firebase, Google Sheets. And so what you're going to need to do is create a new resource. And you can choose from the various options here. I think there was a question earlier about SAP HANA. There was also a question about OAuth possibilities in GraphQL. So if you go to GraphQL, you can choose those options, and SAP HANA as well. Okay, so what we're going to do is choose the Google Sheets resource and give it a name. We'll call it My G Sheet resource, and then click Connect to Google Sheets. And this will take us to our authorization window for Google. And so I will give it permission. And that'll redirect back to Retool here. And now it says that it's connected and we're ready to create a new app. So what we're going to do is create a new app, and we'll give it a name. We'll call it My Customer Feedback Manager. And then click Create App. Yep, and Postgres is supported. You can see here there's a sample Postgres database that's should already be in your account, but we're going to be connecting to Google Sheets. So in this new app, it comes with a table that's already populated with Postgres. So what I'm going to do is change this query 1, which we can see down here in the bottom corner. And what we wanted to do is to get our feedback. So I'll save it, give it a name, and now I'm going to choose my Google Sheets connector. So I can just type Sheets here. And this is the one I just created, my G Sheet resource. And then from here, we have the ability to interface with our Google Sheets. So if you look at the action type dropdown, you can see we can read data from the sheet, we can append data, we can update the sheet, we can do a bulk update, we can delete values, create a new spreadsheet. And so what we're going to do first is read data from this sheet.
Chris, before we do that, we want to just like again show one, so people who didn't get a chance to sign in, the how you connected the Google Sheet in Retool.
Yeah,
so
definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So from the resource screen, choose Google Sheets, and then give it a name, and then click Connect to Google Sheets. And this will redirect you to Google and allow you to authorize Retool to connect to your Google Sheet.
Awesome. I hope that answers the question, Arshi. Good. Yeah, we're good. So I think you can move back to the app now.
Yeah, and please keep doing this because I can't keep track of all the different chat and Q&A stuff. Okay, so from there, we
do you want to
selected our
the Postgres? Like, how do you just connect Postgres? I think that was another question.
Yeah, totally. So in the same way, if you are connecting to a Postgres database, you can choose Postgres as an option here, as well as MySQL, Microsoft SQL, other database types. So choose Postgres, and then you can plug in your database credentials here. You can also set this as a database string.
Yeah. And folks, for who won't get ProdDB access, you can always self-host Retool. So.
Yeah, totally. So if you have sort of IT restrictions around access to your data systems, you can always host Retool within your own infrastructure, within your own private network, your firewall. So you don't have to always enable access to the external networks.
Thanks, Chris.
Yep. So from here, we've said we're going to read data from the spreadsheet, and the question is which spreadsheet. So choosing the dropdown, we will choose the customer feedback form. So you guys are on copy of customer feedback. And then we can preview this to make sure we're actually able to get some data from that system. And we can see that data did come in. So I'll just press Command S, and that will save this query called get feedback. And what you'll also notice as we save that and it ran, we have now our data in this table. And so often the question is, how does the data get into this table? So if I select the table and you see the blue outline here, looking at the right-hand side, we can see this data field, and it's referencing my get feedback query and .data, which is the data that came back from that query. And you can see a little preview of the data in JSON format. And so anytime you type in curly braces here, double curly brackets, you can see which components, which queries exist. And so you can quickly see what already exists within your app. And so I'll just choose get feedback.data, and then that populates our table with the data from our sheet. Okay. And so since we have a lot of data in this, we also want to modify some of the properties for our table. So we're going to set this to compact mode, which will allow it to display more data. And let's just resize it a bit. So you can just click and drag. And any of these components, you can also select them and use the right, left, up, down arrows to move them around in a little bit more precise way on your panel. Okay, so now we have our data in from Google Sheets. And let me just check the chat, make sure we're all following along. Yeah.
I think we're good. I'll stop you so you can keep moving.
Okay, great. Okay, so now next, let's just give ourselves a title. All this. I'm gonna use Markdown here, so 2 number signs, and then my customer feedback manager. Okay, and then next what we want to do is just build out a little space where we can work through this workflow that we're talking about. So the ideal goal is that we want to be able to quickly see who's given us feedback and send them a personalized email. And so on the right-hand side here, we want to create a little section, and we're going to use a container. And the first thing we want to do is just be able to see the feedback that they've given us. So maybe I want to quickly go and scan through the feedback. So what I'm going to do is give this a title. So we'll just call it customer feedback. And let's change the name, the background color for make it a little more interesting. And now we're going to drop in a text field, and we're going to reference the selected row in our table. And so for you all that are more technical, you might want to use the data browser in the left-hand panel, and this will show you all of the properties, methods tied to these components. So if you want to explore on your own, you can go through and see what all data you can access through the JavaScript interface. And so what we're going to do is reference, using our curly brackets, the table1 selected row.data. And we want to pick a specific thing, which is the column feedback. And so that's represented as feedback here. And so now I can see that the feedback from the selected row is here. And let's just make this a little bit bigger so it's easier to see. And so now as we click through this table, we can see whatever the most relevant feedback is for that user.
Chris, can you just zoom in, because I think your screen's a little pixelated because of the, yeah. So can you just show what you put in that column, text field?
Yeah. So table1 dot selected row dot data dot feedback.
Awesome.
Okay. So the next thing we want to do is to create our email or message sending interface. So we're going to add another container in here, and bigger. And let's give this one a title, email. And for this one, we need to have some input fields that will allow us to quickly see the email address, the subject line, the body of the email. And so let's add these in. So we'll start with text input. And this will be the email address. And I'm going to select this one and duplicate it, pressing Command D. And for the next one, I will do the subject line. And then the next thing I want to add is a text area. So this will be a multi-line area. And this will be for the body of our email. Okay. And when we want to send this, we need a button to give ourselves some action. So we want a button that's going to say send email. Okay. And so one question you might be wondering is, okay, well, how do we actually link the button to a query? And then we need to also set up our Gmail resource so that the button can link to sending an actual Gmail email. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is go and set up our Gmail resource. So to do this, you can hit Command K. and go to Resources, and then go to Create New. And what we're going to choose is our SMTP resource type.
Do you want to just tell people what SMTP is?
Yeah, so SMTP is a generic protocol for sending email messages, and most email providers will support this. So whether you have Gmail or Outlook or some other hosting provider, you can connect to your email system usually over SMTP. And to find the details, then you'll need to set up your configuration. So for Gmail, it looks like this: smtp.gmail.com, port 465, and then whatever your login details are. And to do this, depending on your organization's restrictions, you might have to go and enable a flag on your account. And if that's the case, just message in the chat, and we can try and work it out after at the end of this. But oftentimes you don't need to do that. And so once you put in your Gmail access information, you can save the changes for that connection, and then go back to your app. And so you can click to the apps and then choose your app, which will be listed here. You can also press Command K anywhere in the app. So that's either Command K or Control K, and just type the name of it. And this is what we call the Omni box. So it's a quick way of getting back and forth between different apps, resources, configuration settings, etc. Okay. So within our app, we've now set up our Gmail resource. And so now what we can do is go and create a new resource query. And in this query, we're going to be referencing our Gmail server. And so you can see here, once we select that, the settings show up for setting up a from email, to email addresses, CCs, BCs, subjects, bodies, etc. And so what we're going to want to do is reference this send field in our send email. So let's just give this a name, call it send email. And let's go ahead and link in our selected row data into our email input. So for the email address, just zoom in here, we're going to reference, in the same way we did it up here, we're going to reference the table 1 selected row data. And now we're going to grab the email address from that selected row. And you can see that this is populating to the current selected row. And so I'm just going to copy that. And for our subject line, we'll just set it to following up on your feedback. And for the email body, we might want to say a little bit more. So we'll say, hi. And we want to reference the name of the person who we're speaking with here. So what I'm going to do is do the curly brackets again and selected row.data. And in this case, I'll reference their name. And then I'll say, thanks for submitting some feedback on this presentation. We're happy you've been using and I'm going to reference the feature that they were using. So you can see this is referencing the enterprise login feature now.
Of course, best feature.
Yeah, right. And I want to personalize this in a little bit. So I'll just say, how's it going for you? Let's say, thanks. Okay, so now I have that value set up, And as I click through these different fields in my table, I can see that the email message is updating with their feature, with their name, with their email address. And let's just resize this a bit bigger. And so now we're getting to the place where you can imagine you can start scrolling through this different table. You can quickly add in, maybe you know this person, you can say, hi, Nick, long time no talk. And so as you can quickly go through this, you can send personalized emails to these people, but save a lot of time while you're doing it. So the next step we need to do is link this button to all these values. And when we do that, we want to pass all the values from that field into our send email query. So let's go ahead and map these fields over to our query. So the from email, I'll just set it to be from my email address. And the to email is going to be the field value from this text input to. So I'll reference my text input to value. You can see that that's referencing the correct email. And the subject line, I want to reference from text input 1 value, and we can see that that's correct. And last in the body, I want to reference my text area 1 value. That's populating correctly. And so let's save this, and then we'll link this button now to this query.
Are you going to send an email, Chris?
Yes, sir. Okay, so then we will link the button. And so to do that, in this button, you can see that there's a section on the right-hand side called event handlers. And so these events are generic things that could make your app more interactive. And so if you click on that, you can see that this click action will generate a query trigger. But it could also run some piece of JavaScript. It could go to a specific app, go to some other URL. It could set some temporary state variables. It could modify components, etc. So we're just going to set it to trigger this query. And it's already picked up that the last query we created is this send email query. Okay, so we've set that to send email. It's saved. And now I'm just going to do a little test here. And let's just set my email address. And this is all running live. So if I click send email here, you can see that the query is running. And let's just pull up my email. And we can see that I just received an email from my Retool app. And so that's, we're going pretty slow, but honestly, you could, once you get familiar with Retool, this whole app maybe takes 10 minutes to build and can really save a ton of time for these repetitive types of processes. Okay, so let's kind of wrap up some of the other ideas that we have here. So some other questions that have come up is, what sets this apart from something like Power Apps or these other tools? And really a lot of it is that we expose as much properties and settings as possible. And so you can go in and modify any of these columns specifically. So say this custom intercom message. You might want to set some value to run some code that can transform the value. So you might say, if this is equal to true, then actually render it as a Boolean so that you can modify the values that are in this table. You could say change background colors based on this code. As these queries run, you can also run transformers that allow you to modify the data in JavaScript. You can create JavaScript queries directly, which these abilities to write code directly give a ton of functionality. So, and even if you're fairly less technical, you can build out these types of apps very easily. But then really there's very few limits in terms of what types of things you can build in Retool because of this ability to always have access to different properties, methods, code, custom API endpoints, etc.
All right, Chris, I'm gonna stop you there. I think you might want to just show this once in the end user mode, because there's a lot of questions about how do we export this app.
Yeah, totally. So if you click preview, this takes you to the user mode. So now we have the app running. I could share this as a public link. Let's just do that.
Yeah, you can give everyone access to this app and let them send emails.
Yeah, let's do that.
I'm afraid everyone is actually trying to like send these 100 emails all in bulk. So I think that's also another question that's something you can do. Also, you can connect this to, if you have like an email sending service, you can connect that. Just to clarify, we're not building an email sending service. We're just trying to showcase like an app, like a problem you might have. How do we like build a very simple app on top of Google Sheets? Obviously, you can build really complex apps. This edit, and I think you want to just go back and forth between edit and publish. You can just show how you can change things live and then just go into the end user mode.
Yeah. So say you start to build this out, and now you want to do something a little bit more active with these customers. Like you maybe want to enable a feature flag. So let's drop in a button here, and we'll just say enable feature. And so now, as you're using this tool, you might modify this to enable a feature and then have that call into some new query. You can just go back, and this end user app is updated, and you have a new feature built into this tool.
Right.
And so that also means you can go back and see all of the changes that are made over time. So if multiple people are working on these, you can revert back if you need to.
Yeah, Chris, I know you want to show everything that you can do in Retool, but we're over already. So I'm gonna
we should do a part 2 maybe, and then just focus on the workshop bit and go deeper into this.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
So yeah, that really wraps it up on my end. Thank you all so much for listening, for asking questions, for engaging. There are a bunch more of these types of tutorials on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/retool, as well as our docs pages with a ton of helpful content.
Yeah, if you want to see more of Chris, you go to the YouTube channel.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Thank you all.
So I'm gonna just wrap it up. I think Suhas, you can also cover this, but we mentioned this, that we have a exclusive code for product folks. You guys can get Retool for like 12 months for free, up to $1,200 in credits. We also have a lot of other discounts, like the product folks team as well. So if you sign up for the startup program, that's something that you can use Retool. You can like build these apps that Chris built out today on your own and really like play around with it for free and get a sense of how to use it. That's our like Twitter @Retool and LinkedIn. You can always email support with questions. You can also email me if you're like, I'm sid@retool.com if you're interested in the startup credits, the nonprofit credits, or any we have a lot of other stuff. If you love like learning more about the playbooks, I think there is, Chris, if you just mind like clicking on one of them, you can show like the founding story of Retool. A lot of people might be interested in that based on your session. Yeah, and we have a few startup playbooks of not about Retool actually. This is just content about early days of like startups and what are the problems they faced. This is about our journey. There's others. I think if you go back, there's about Stripe and Segment. And last but not the least, I think we have the Airblack team is hiring. I think Vidit already mentioned, you can email Vidit. I'm sid@retool.com. Always feel free to reach out. I'm @PuriSid on Retool on Twitter, where I'm fairly active. You'll see me chatting with Suhas all the time on Twitter. And that's the session. I think Suhas, you can close it out. Thanks.
Absolutely. No, super appreciate this. absolutely loved this session. In fact, there's one of the workshops where the examples you picked was one that I really needed. So personally, I definitely took that bit away. But I know Shalini has a closing for this, so I'll probably bring her up for this and I'll wrap it up. Shalini, over to you before I just take this over.
Yeah, thanks a lot, everyone, for this amazing session. And thanks, everyone, for joining in on a Wednesday night. And with that, we are at the end of our session. And we hope you had a good time. And also, we have a session this Friday, No Code for Product Managers. I'll share the link in the chat. Please do join that session. With that, we are at the end. Bye, everyone. Good night.
Thanks, Shalini.
Bye.
Thanks so much. Thanks so much, Sid.
Yeah.
Thank you,
And
everyone.
Thank you.
yeah.